You ever smile in front of people while your heart is quietly breaking inside? Like you're standing there pretending everything's fine because causing a scene feels worse than swallowing the pain? That was me on Mother's Day. And honestly, if my daughter hadn't spoken up that afternoon, I probably would have continued lying to myself about my marriage for years. Because sometimes the people closest to you humiliate you so gradually, you stop realizing how wrong it actually is. But the moment my daughter looked directly at her father and told him the truth in front of everyone, everything changed. And trust me, when I say the entire room went silent, I mean the kind of silence that makes people suddenly uncomfortable with things they've ignored for years. Now, before I tell you what happened that day, you need to understand how emotional disrespect builds slowly inside relationships. Because toxic marriages rarely begin with obvious cruelty. At first, it's subtle. Little comments disguised as jokes. Constant criticism disguised as help. Embarrassing you publicly and then calling you too sensitive afterward. And over time, if you're not careful, you start shrinking yourself emotionally just to keep peace in the house. That's exactly what happened to me. When I first met my husband, he was charismatic, funny, successful. Everybody loved him instantly. Especially me. He made me feel chosen in the beginning. Important, safe. But slowly, things changed after marriage. The compliments became criticism. The affection became control. And somehow, every disagreement turned into a lecture about what I was supposedly doing wrong. Now here's the dangerous part. When disrespect becomes consistent, your brain starts normalizing it. You stop asking, is this healthy? And start asking, how do I avoid upsetting them? That shift changes everything. Now during those years, one thing quietly kept me emotionally grounded. Fitness. And honestly, I don't think people realize how deeply health and fitness can affect your mental survival. The gym became my escape long before it became a passion. It was the one place where effort mattered more than opinions, where progress was measurable, where discipline created results even when life outside felt emotionally chaotic. Every workout reminded me I was still strong somewhere, because emotionally, I was exhausted. And the crazy part is most people around us had no idea. From the outside, we looked perfect. Nice house, nice pictures, perfect family online. But appearances can hide incredible loneliness. Now let's get to Mother's Day. That morning actually started peacefully. I woke up early, cleaned the house, got dressed, helped my daughter prepare cards and flowers for my mother and mother-in-law. And honestly, part of me hoped maybe this year would feel different. Maybe I'd finally feel appreciated instead of tolerated. But deep down, I think I already knew how the day would go. We arrived at my mother-in-law's house around noon. Big family gathering, music playing, food everywhere, everybody laughing loudly. And immediately, I switched into survival mode emotionally. If you've ever dealt with toxic family dynamics, you know exactly what I mean. Monitoring everyone's mood constantly, trying not to say the wrong thing, trying to avoid becoming the target. Now my husband was already irritated before we even sat down. Something small involving parking had annoyed him, and with him, frustration never stayed contained. Eventually, someone else paid emotionally for it. Usually me. Now during lunch, the conversation shifted toward parenting, and suddenly my mother-in-law started praising traditional women who supposedly put their husbands first no matter what. Everybody nodded along awkwardly. Then my husband laughed and said, "Well, that definitely doesn't describe my wife." People chuckled nervously. And honestly, I smiled automatically. That's what survival looks like sometimes. Smiling through disrespect, because confronting it feels too exhausting publicly. But then he kept going. He started joking about my workouts, about my healthy eating, about how I cared more about the gym than being a proper wife. and every comment chipped away at me slowly, while everybody sat there pretending it was harmless. Now let me explain something important. Public humiliation inside relationships is never accidental. It's about control. About establishing dominance socially, and honestly, the worst part wasn't even his words. It was the fact nobody defended me. Not one person. That kind of silence teaches you a painful lesson about people. Comfort often matters more to them than truth. Now I tried staying calm. Really. Because fitness had taught me emotional control over the years. When you train consistently, you learn how to breathe through discomfort instead of reacting immediately. You learn discipline under pressure. And honestly, those skills saved me countless times emotionally. But then came the moment everything changed. My husband looked around the table smiling and said, "Mother's Day should really celebrate moms who actually prioritize their families." And then he looked directly at me. That look told everybody exactly who the comment was aimed at. The room got awkward instantly. Now maybe to outsiders, that sentence doesn't sound devastating, but after years of criticism, comparison, and emotional belittling, it hit differently. Because it wasn't just one comment. It was years of accumulated disrespect packed into one moment. And honestly, I felt myself shutting down emotionally right there at the table. That heavy, numb feeling where embarrassment becomes too overwhelming to process immediately. I stared at my plate, trying not to cry publicly. And then something happened nobody expected. My daughter spoke. Now let me tell you something about children. They see far more than adults realize. Even when we think we're protecting them. Even when we whisper arguments behind closed doors. Kids absorb emotional energy constantly. And my daughter had apparently been watching much more carefully than either of us understood. She looked directly at her father and said quietly, "Mom always puts us first. You're just mean to her." Complete silence, the kind of silence that instantly changes the entire atmosphere in a room. Nobody moved. Nobody laughed. Even my husband looked stunned, but my daughter wasn't finished. And honestly, what she said next still makes me emotional thinking about it. She looked at him and said, "You make Mom cry after you think I'm asleep." I felt my entire body freeze. Because suddenly the truth I spent years hiding privately was sitting in the middle of the table, where everybody could see it clearly. And children tell the truth without polishing it, without protecting appearances, without caring about social comfort. That's why her words hit so hard. Now my husband immediately tried laughing it off, tried calling her dramatic, but the energy had already changed completely. Because once truth enters a room honestly, people can't unhear it. And for the first time in years, I stopped protecting him. I stopped interrupting, stopped minimizing, stopped making excuses. I just sat there quietly, while the reality of our marriage finally became visible to everyone else. Now here's the strange part. Instead of feeling humiliation, I suddenly felt clarity. Deep clarity. Because hearing my daughter describe our home through her eyes forced me to confront something painful. I had normalized behavior that was hurting her too. Not just me. Her. And honestly, that realization changed everything instantly. See, as adults, we can tolerate unbelievable amounts of emotional pain when it only affects us. But when you realize your child is learning unhealthy relationship patterns by watching your silence, something inside you wakes up. Now my mother-in-law started defending her son immediately, of course, saying children misunderstand adult relationships. But my daughter calmly replied, "I understand when somebody is hurting my mom." And, honestly, that sentence hit harder than anything else that day. Because she was right. Children understand emotional safety instinctively. sometimes better than adults do. Now, after that moment, the gathering basically collapsed emotionally. Conversations became awkward. People avoided eye contact. And for the first time ever, my husband looked genuinely uncomfortable publicly instead of confident. Because controlling people rely heavily on silence. And once silence breaks, their image becomes fragile. We left shortly afterward. The car ride home was silent. But, honestly, my mind felt louder than ever. Because suddenly years of excuses sounded ridiculous in my head. He's just stressed. He doesn't mean it. It's not that bad. But hearing my daughter speak the truth destroyed every excuse I had built emotionally. Now here's where health and fitness changed my life in ways bigger than appearance. See, discipline had already been rebuilding my self-worth quietly for years. Every workout reminded me I could endure difficult things without collapsing. Every healthy habit reinforced self-respect. Every moment of consistency taught me I deserved care too. And eventually, that internal strength reached a point where staying emotionally trapped became harder than leaving. That's the power of discipline. People think fitness only changes your body. But real transformation happens mentally first. You start respecting yourself differently, protecting your peace differently, setting boundaries differently. And honestly, that journey prepared me for what came next, because that Mother's Day became the beginning of the end for my marriage, not dramatically overnight, but emotionally, something shifted permanently. I stopped shrinking myself, stopped accepting humiliation disguised as humor, stopped confusing endurance with love, and most importantly, I started paying attention to what my daughter deserved to witness growing up. Now looking back, I realized something important. My daughter didn't embarrass my husband that day. She exposed the truth. There's a difference. And sometimes the smallest voice in the room becomes the most honest one, because children haven't yet learned how to normalize dysfunction the way adults do. So if you're listening right now while constantly being disrespected, criticized, or emotionally diminished in your relationship, hear me carefully. Love should never require humiliation. Healthy relationships do not destroy your confidence slowly. And your children are learning what love looks like by watching what you tolerate every single day. Protect your peace. Protect your self-worth. And never underestimate how powerful honesty becomes once somebody finally says out loud what everybody else was too afraid to admit.